All right, Assalamu alaikum everyone. If we can all keep ourselves on mute, inshallah. All right. Okay, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the second seminar of the parenting seminar series. Well, today's topics will be screens and video games. I am Nosheen Khan, and I will be your MC for the seminar. I am also a primary teacher at Rise Online. The seminar will first focus on the addictive, corruptive, and potentially unsafe nature of video games. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Please keep yourselves on mute. Jazakallah. So the seminar will first focus on the addictive, corruptive, and potentially unsafe nature of video games using the perspectives of Islamic experts and psychologists, and then present practical strategies for parents to use, inshallah. We will start with Quran recitation by a Rise Academy 5th grade student, Hassan Falahati. Hassan Falahati, if you could please unmute yourself and inshallah start us off with the Quran recitation.
Assalamu alaikum. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم.
Thank you, Hassan, for your beautiful recitation. That was refreshing indeed. I just want to remind everyone that we are also live streaming this event on YouTube. You can find the live stream at the Rise Academy YouTube channel. So just type Rise Academy, capital R-I-S-E Academy, and you'll be able to find the live stream, inshallah. Right, we will now begin our seminar, and I would like to welcome Sheikh Salim, who will be leading our seminar today, inshallah. Just a quick introduction about Sheikh Salim. He was born and raised in the United States. After completing his Bachelor's of Science and Master's in Science in Computer Science from Stanford University, California, he worked in Silicon Valley as a software engineer and then as an engineering manager. In 2004, he left his job and moved to Qom to study in the Hawza and completed his master's degree from Al Mustafa University in 2014. From 2014 to 2019, he was a spiritual guide of a private full-time Islamic school in Ontario, Canada. As of July 2020, he is the Dean of Mission at Rise Academy and the Assistant Resident Scholar of Saba Center in San Jose, California. He is also pursuing a doctorate degree in educational leadership from Western University. MashaAllah, a lot of credentials. So please welcome Sheikh Salim with a loud salawat. Muted, please. Allah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Ali Muhammad. Jazakallah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that everyone's doing well, and welcome to our webinar this Saturday morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. May Allah Ta'ala bless all of you, and may Allah reward you all for taking this time to participate and to learn and to inshallah be reminded about some important concepts relating to raising our children, and in particular the topic of video games and screens. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my presentation, and inshallah I'll explain the topics that I'll be speaking about and some of the main points, inshallah. So let me get a moment here. Okay. So the topic of screens is actually like it's a pretty wide topic, and there's a lot of things that could be talked about when it comes to screens. Today's seminar is talking particularly about video games. Inshallah, 2 weeks from now, we have a follow-up seminar where I will be talking about screens in general, social media, and screen time. But today is mostly about video games. And, you know, in the past, I've gotten a chance to do seminars on parenting, and usually I try to talk about video games and social media and screens all together, and it turns out to be a lot of different topics. So today I wanted to focus just on video games, and the reason is because of the, it's by design, meaning that being somebody who's an educator, being somebody who I've had the blessing and the opportunity and the responsibility of being with the youth, being with our children for years now, seeing what's happening on the ground, working with educators, working with teachers, working with principals. I can say that this topic is of paramount importance for our parents to gain an understanding about. And the reason is because how video games have negatively affected our children, especially over the last number of years. And I've seen too many examples of wonderful children being destroyed in different areas of their development because of video games. And that's the reason why I wanted to highlight that for today. Now, the verse that I want to take as inspiration for today's seminar is this verse in Surah Al-Hadid, where Allah Ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد كمثل غيث أعجب الكفار نباته ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم يكون حطاما وفي الآخرة عذاب شديد ومغفرة من الله ورضوان وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور. This verse is an amazing verse. You know, Allah Ta'ala talks about the different stages of people who are occupied with a worldly life. What is it that they live for? So he says that at the beginning, you see that those who are young, babies, children, like it's about diversion and play. And some of that is natural, some of it is good, it's healthy. But it's not supposed to be the case that you just stay there. You're supposed to move beyond that stage and realize that there's more to life than that. And then there's people who get, when they get a bit older, they into like zina, how is it that they look, adornment, and of course that's also useful and beneficial, but to a certain extent. And then those who get older, it becomes about tafakhur bainakum, like, I have more than the others, and then watakathur fil amwal, just gain more and more and more, bigger and more investments, more more property, more vehicles, more vehicles of entertainment, and then more children, and then families. And you try to, then towards the end of one's life, somebody can be obsessed with leaving behind a legacy, and making sure that happens, like the family name is preserved. But Allah Ta'ala reminds us that this is just temporary. There's a bigger purpose that we're here for. And that is Ridwan. That there's something that we have come here to attain, which is Jannah, and what lies beyond Jannah, or what lies at the highest points of Jannah, which is Ridwan, Allah's pleasure. And the dunya is supposed to be a means of attaining that pleasure. Now, the reason why I chose this verse is because of the relevancy to our topic here. There's people who, even adults, they get stuck with some of these stages and they can't get beyond them. And the danger that we're facing right now with video games is this, that they become the purpose of one's existence. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to understand what we can do about it. Now, just a reminder, we had a seminar 2 weeks ago, alhamdulillah, on the same platform, and it was offered by the RISE educational system. It was for those who attend the Islamic school, and also those who don't attend the Islamic school. But the reason why it's being offered from the RISE education platform is because from the perspective of a school which has a mission. It's a mission-based school. The mission is to create, or to nurture, in a holistic manner, children and youth who will be rich with Islamic values, who will be servants of Allah, who will be awaiters of the Imam of the time, inshallah. That mission can't be one where the families are sitting at the periphery and they're just watching what happens, and there's no deep connection. And so it has to be the case that the mission, it applies to all who are involved, the teachers, the staff, the educators, the administration, the parents, and the children. Everyone has to be working together. Otherwise, the project is going to be a failure. And that's why, even what do Islamic schools look like? And from the inside, like there's a lot of time that in Islamic school, a lot of time is spent towards talking about like the fact that we have a greater purpose, and what can we do ourselves to be able to achieve that purpose for ourselves, and to be able to convey to others. But that also has to happen, in the family and in the home. And so I really appreciate, those families who are taking the time out this morning or wherever it may be your time zone to participate. And I hope that, inshallah, those of you who will be watching this afterwards, that you spread the word, that anybody who wants to, sort of be involved with these type of efforts, there has to be consistent, there has to be this awareness at home. Now, when I look at kind of the topic, and this is something that is very dear to me, like, because it's something that like when I look at, again, like I want to repeat myself, that I've seen examples of children who were very, very, very special children, and unfortunately, what happened was that they got into certain things through screens that really damaged them. Now, inshallah, there's hope that they'll recover, and they will, Allah Ta'ala will show them there's mercy, and that damage that was done, it will be undone, inshallah. But the fact is that in many cases that damage did happen. And if we want to ask the question, well, who is to blame, right? Is it the child? I mean, if you look at these children, they're young, right? If they're presented with such cool gadgets and devices, what do you expect them to do, right? I mean, these things are designed to attract them and to keep their attention, and to entertain them in the most sophisticated way possible. So the children cannot be blamed in many of these cases, but the one who is to be blamed is the parents. And many times these cases have happened when the parents just didn't have a clue. They didn't realize what was happening on that screen. They didn't realize what type of communication was happening with those, with the headphones. They weren't aware of, some of the secrets that the children were aware of. They didn't know what was happening, in the middle of the night. They didn't know what was happening for that 1 hour when the child was borrowing their parents' phone. They thought they were just talking to friends, but there was other stuff going on. They weren't aware of that app they got installed as a virus on the iPad. I mean, one of the just as an example, like, I have a lot of stories to say, and I'm sorry for, kind of going off topic. I'm usually more linear and structured, but this is because it's something which is sort of dear to my heart. And so I just wanted to talk about it and, share the story. I mean, there's the example of the elementary school student who, by mistake, he got this app on his iPad, which would start showing, very, very indecent pictures. And, it was designed in a way where that thing could be hidden whenever there was any adult in the area with just a single click. And he got into, a habit of watching this. And then what happened was that he got his younger sister involved as well. And she was, just, maybe in first grade or something like that. And I have many stories of these type of things happening, whether they be video games or whether they be the apps or social media or whatever it may be. And I want to remind myself and all of you of this part right here. I mean, this is the Imam of our time, Ajallahu Farajahu Sharif. And, if there's anything that we everything that we have that's of value is because of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. He's our leader, he's our master, and we pray for him and we want him to be our leader. But there's a responsibility that we have as parents to do something about that for ourselves and for our children as well too. And so this idea of preparing a generation of those who are awaiters of the Imam, it definitely has something to do with this concept of keeping them pure and making sure we make the right choices for the development. And part of that has to do with gaming. So what I want to cover today is it's a simple presentation, inshallah. I'm making it very straightforward, very simple. I would like to talk about three topics. Okay, one of them is what is the goal in raising children? Because when we are fully aware of this, then I think a lot of the answers about screen time and what games we should buy for our children and how much they play, a lot of that just gets answered naturally. It becomes very clear once the purpose is clear. And technology is changing all the time, and there's always new devices and new apps and whatever it may be. So we need some guidelines where we can be able to apply them in all circumstances. Now, parents, a lot of times in the past, it's happened that they're looking for very specific things, like, okay, tell me the names of the games that I can allow my children to play, and what is it, like those type of things. Is this game allowed, okay or not? That's not the purpose of the presentation. The purpose is to give the guidelines, and then it's really up to parents to be aware and be in the know, and then apply them in a correct manner to the best of their ability. And of course, we're here for consultation. It doesn't have to just be this. Like there can be follow-ups as well too. There can be appointments made. We're happy to help out, inshallah. Now, some hadith which just is good for us to keep in mind when we're talking about the purpose. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that the best thing parents can hand down to their children is adab, not wealth. Wealth goes away while al-adab remains. Now, adab here doesn't just mean like politeness and manners as it does in some languages. We have to understand what adab means at that time. Adab at that time meant how to lead life, what kind of lifestyle to have, an Islamic lifestyle, which includes manners, but includes other things as well too, like how do we spend our time, how do we communicate, how do we live in a family, how do we live as Muslims, what do we do with our spare time, what is our purpose, right? All of these things, like it's everything, like the immaterial part of life. That's what has value. That's what remains. That's what the Imams want from us as parents when it comes to what we should be striving for when it comes to our children. Okay, I want to go to the third hadith. I'll come back to the second one. Imam Ali Islam, by Allah, and I quote this hadith in almost every parenting seminar I give, because I find it to just be so refreshing and so like instructive. By Allah, I never asked my Lord for a child with a beautiful face, nor one who had a good posture. Now, those things, of course, are a bonus, and they're nice to haves. And it wasn't the case that somebody would be ungrateful for that. No, we're grateful for that too. But what's important is that I asked my Lord for children who obey Allah, fearful of Him, such that when I look at them and they are obedient to Allah, my eye is comforted. That is what has priority. The development of a human being and their relationship with Allah. And here we are in Silicon Valley. At least that's where I am. I know that all of you may be in different places, but I live in Silicon Valley right now, where there's a very deep kind of culture, which is one of like that success is defined by the GPA that you get, by the university you get into, by the number of digits you have on your salary, and those type of things. And I know that we look at those and all the times we scoff. We're like, of course we're beyond that. We're not just about like numbers and grades and career and all that. But wait a minute, like really is that really like do we really have a greater purpose in mind for our children? Of course, nobody's we believe that being successful academically is tied to being successful overall. But of course, academically, not the way that is defined typically. That's a separate topic. But the point is that there's something else that we want to be striving for when it comes to our children, and not just that. Oh, okay, yeah, they're practicing, and but what's really important to me is they get into that like Ivy League university. Okay. The second now, so these give us principles about parenting. The second hadith here: knowledge in childhood is like engraving a stone. Meaning that what children are exposed to when they are young has a huge impact on their development. It's very important. And that's why parents, need to be very particular about this. What is entering into the heart of our children? There's a story told of Fadl ibn Abbas. He was a young man who was with the Prophet ﷺ, and there was a lady who came who she had some questions for the Prophet ﷺ. And while the Prophet was answering the questions, he could tell that Fadl ibn Abbas was distracted because of the presence of this female. Now, that itself is important, that the Prophet is watchful over the children and the youth. Right? He's aware of what are they being distracted by. And then the Prophet ﷺ, while he's talking to this lady, he's answering her questions, right? He takes his blessed hand and he turns his face away. And he says something to the extent that I'm fearful that the shaitan will come and create something here. Now that is a tarbiyah strategy of taking an active approach when it comes to things that we know are potentially harmful for our children. We take an active approach to that. We do things, we're aware of that, we're monitoring it. Not that we just be like, okay, you're on your own, figure it out yourself. I'm here for you if you need me, give me a call. Right? No, we take an active approach. Okay, so to summarize some of those points, actually one more principle here is about the dunya. This is important. Okay, and then we'll summarize. Imam Sadiq al-Islam says, give yourself from the dunya what you long from those pleasures which are halal, as long as you are not excessive and you are present where you have been prohibited and absent where you have been commanded. So the idea, like this seminar is not to say that our children should have no fun, should have no entertainment, and like life is about work and life is about being on the prayer mat. That's not the Islamic perspective. There is room for pleasure and for engaging in the dunya, but it has to be purposeful. It has to be measured. It has to have rules along with it of halal and haram. There has to be regulations. And as parents, we need to teach this type of approach of how to interact with the dunya to our children. There's a general principle which can be applied to many things. Here in Surah Al-Mulk, it is He who made the earth tractable for you. فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا. So walk on its flanks. Some of the Mufassirin, they've said that there's a point here that your job as an insan is to take that dunya and you walk on it. Allah made you superior to it. He made you in control of what you want from this dunya. But don't let it take you for a ride. You walk on it, you take it, you do whatever, but you don't let it come and walk on you. And that applies to devices, it applies to gaming, it applies to social media. That the general principle is one that we're in charge. We're making choices about what to do and what not to do. Not that by default it's in charge. Many, unfortunately, this hurts to say this, that many believe, mu'min families, families of believers, the default approach they have towards video games is that, okay, that you have to do these things. My child, I'm asking you to pray, I'm asking you to go to school, I'm asking you to do this and this and this. Any free time you have, then it's on your own to do whatever you want with the devices, right? And that is a destructive approach. That is not an Islamic approach towards parenting, and we're going to talk more about that, inshallah. So, some points, and this part's a bit theoretical. I'm gonna get practical in just a bit here, talking about video games, but this is important because these are principles. So these are questions. I'm saying them. I'm asking my parents to ask themselves, what is the answer to this? What is the goal that I have for my children? Where have I set my sights when it comes to where I'd like my child to be? Of course, we're not responsible for taking them there, but at least we can tell Allah that that's what we wanted and we tried. We're not responsible for the results. Is it for them to reach their full God-given potential? Allah Ta'ala created human beings to be perfect human beings, to be not a masum, but to be in the line of isma, to be in the line of wilaya of Allah, to be awliya of Allah, to be special friends of Allah. Do I want that? And what am I doing for that? Or is it that, that my goal is set at them being worldly successful? Or is it that I want them to be religious as I am? Am I using myself as the standard for marking what my children should be at? What approach have I taken as a parent when it comes to my children and the dunya? Do I distinguish between wants and needs? Or is it that when my children want something, then my default is, okay, well, I'm going to give it to them? Do I teach them limits even when it comes to halal? Do I buy for them based on what others do or what Allah wants from me? And do I care about what implications my actions have for other parents? And this is key, because when, for example, let's say that there's a class of children in an Islamic school or in Sunday school, or let's say that there's a group of youth who are growing up together in an Islamic center environment. Well, as the parent, I need to realize that what I do for my child is going to have an impact on what other parents do. Now, am I looking out just selfishly for my own children? And maybe I can say, oh, if I buy my children this thing, then I'll be able to monitor them because I have all the time in the world to be able to sit with them and play with them on that device. But am I looking and saying, well, what implication is it going to have on Zaid and his parents? Maybe his parents don't have that luxury to be able to spend time with Zaid, right? Or with, I don't want to name any name here, just whatever, with the other girl or with the other boy, right? These are things which are very important. I'm going to come back to this issue of parents being on the same, working together for this. And then I need to ask myself, do I understand what I've been created for? What am I doing to achieve the goal of my creation? Is that something that I'm actively taking strides towards? And if not, then I'm fooling myself. I mean, if I want to be a parent and I want my child to be able to reach their good, full God-given potential, then I also have to be on a path as well too. I have to know at least what does it mean on a practical level for me to be able to reach my full God-given potential. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just to go back to the, kind of the agenda. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, we just talked about the goal. We're talking about potential harms of gaming. I'm going to look at different aspects of area. Now, some of them are, these are topics which, are not just for Muslims. I mean, they're for any parent who cares about what kind of impact gaming is going to have for their children. So at times I'm going to be relying on some of the research that's been done by experts in the field. But of course, I want to explain that in an Islamic light, and then we're going to talk about some of the guidelines that we have. And then at the end, inshallah, there will be time for some questions. So the presentation part, the goal is to end that up by, inshallah, like 11 o'clock Pacific time. And then inshallah, there'll be time for questions after that. Okay, so one thing that, of course, video games are, a lot of parents are concerned about is the violent aspect of it. Now, not all video games are created equal, and some are much more violent than others. But typically, those games that are most attractive to boys, especially, are those that have violence in them, some component of violence. And usually that violence involves killing other human beings. Now, if you were to leave a boy on his own to decide whatever game he wants to play, most likely he would play that type of game. Of course, the second type would be sports games. But here we're talking about those violent games. Now, in those violent games, one of the most violent is Call of Duty. And it is a game which is commonly played by boys. I'm speaking from experience, and there's always it's been a game which has been widely popular for more than a decade, and it keeps on getting more sophisticated. It involves a lot of violence. Okay, and I'm showing you this clip just. I know that alhamdulillah, many of you are conscientious parents. You wouldn't dream of having your kids play this, or you have done the research and you are aware of this. But anyway, there are some people who haven't done that research, and it's good for them to be aware. So I'm showing this. It's a short clip just showing from one scene from one of the games. And there's a lot out there, and sometimes it's even more gory than this. By the way, when I do show some clips here, there's not going to be anything crazy inappropriate, but the seminar is meant for parents, not for children. So I wouldn't don't show this to your kids. No, brothers and sisters, in this game, you saw here that, this kind of image right here, where you're walking around with a gun right in front of you. Now, most of the game, that's what you're doing. You're walking around with a gun, and you're looking at others from the perspective of a gun barrel. Now, it can be this scene, or it can be other scenes where you do this, you chase somebody down, and then you pull out a knife and then you cut them in the throat. But the point is that you're spending time looking at people through the barrel of a gun. Now, does this have an impact on children in the long run? We'll talk about that, inshallah. But there are different ways of looking at this, but one of the ways is, so actually, okay, let me just talk about it and I brought it up. So two things. First of all, I want to speak about it on the basis of my experience. Second of all, from the basis of some of the research that's been done. So from my experience and the experience of many parents who have spoken up about this, shared their concerns, many teachers who have shared their concerns, is that there is something that transforms in the heart and the akhlaq of a child when they do this excessively. Okay, and when they do it when they're too young. There's something that changes in them. Now, what exactly is it and why does it happen? We can't know for sure, but what we can say is that you can see it in the symptoms that occur. Like that child who used to be friendly, used to care for others, now their heart becomes harder. That child who used to, speak nicely, now mostly what they speak is sarcasm, is using sarcasm. That child who used to be enthusiastic about playing outside and going in nature, now the only thing they're enthusiastic about is being, in front of the screen. And that child who used to be, keenly interested in hearing stories about the prophets and stories about the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, now they find it to be the most boring thing. And I have seen this with my own eyes, and again, others echo the same experience. When it involves like a lot of violence, and then when it's excessive. Okay, now in terms of some of the research that's been done, if you go and do a Google search for violence and violent video games, you'll see that there's a lot of people who say a lot of different things. But a lot of times what they're doing is they're basing it off of like just this study here or that study there. But what you really want to be doing is, from a perspective of like, let's say, psychological researchers, they need to look at longitudinal studies where they track a group of people and children, what happens to them over a number of years when they play violent video games. And if you go and look for those studies, and I've done some of this work for myself to find out, okay, well, what is it that they're saying? There are studies which strongly suggest that the children who play violent video games, it does have a negative effect on their behavior traits. Now, these studies aren't looking at things like taqwa and, let's say, what kind of shauq and passion this child has for spiritual matters, because that's not what they're concerned with. But they do look at things like interest in studies. They look at things like academic performance. They look at things like behavior. They look at things like the children being at risk for, like some of those things, like, let's say, falling into depression or falling into drugs. And in those measures that worry people, even from a purely worldly concern, they have shown that these violent video games do have that effect on them. And I'd be happy to provide some sources, if people would like. Now, another game which is, which is quite popular is Grand Theft Auto GTA 5, and they're going to be coming out with GTA version 6 in version 6 I think at the end of this year or next year. They're going to come out with version 6 of this. Now, when I've talked to children, in my experience, a lot of times they will deny playing this game. But then when you get to know them better, they open up. They actually do admit that they play this game as well. And a lot of times it's without their parents' awareness. And sometimes parents, they don't really get involved in these things. They're just like, okay, my child is, busy. They're not bothering me. So, okay, everything's good. And this is, I know it sounds like horrible, but that's actually what happens. But it's sad because this game in particular, it's quite like, I don't know how to say it, like horrible or like shaitanic or whatever. I'm going to show you, this is somebody who is doing a review for parents. They put together this clip here. It's not crazy inappropriate, but again, it's one of those things where if you have children nearby, it's good to just mute it. But this is just for your awareness, and I'll explain a little bit more after I show this.
Now, that isn't really too bad for most parents, because it's like, whatever, they're not actually drinking or doing drugs, just images. But if you are online or offline, you can go into the strip club and strip the game. You can view the hooker in first person, and she makes a lot of very inappropriate sounds that I'm not showing in the video. You can also go online and offline and beat people mercilessly, beat the cops mercilessly. But there's some worse things in the game, like, the torture scene that a lot of people don't know about, but there's also people who know about it. Most parents don't know about this torture scene that actually starts off with this cutscene of a man pooping behind the garbage can. Adult humor right there, okay? I think that's funny, but a lot of people don't share that view. Now, with the torturing, you personally do it. It's It's not a cutscene. You can't skip it despite what kids say. You cannot skip it. Okay? You pull the man's teeth out if you want. You can waterboard him. You can use a giant monkey wrench to smash his kneecaps or hit him in the nuts. You also, I already said electrocuting actually. Now, with all that though, if you...
Okay, so I mean, you get the point, right? What they're doing is they're taking it so that you, like a human being, can, you know, take out the worst type of behavior that they would never be allowed to do in real life, but they make it happen. They make it a reality, and it's as if there's no consequences for doing this type of thing, because it's just a game. So in the name of a game, a human being is able to like basically be free of any constraints of what's decent and what's appropriate. Now, what they didn't mention in this review here is that, you know, when somebody gets, they get injured in the game, one of the ways of getting healed is by actually going and having an inappropriate, you know, encounter with these women who are selling themselves. You actually get points and you get healed by having that relationship. And but you have to give up money for that. So the game actually allows you to then, after you pay that money and you get healed, you can go and then kill that woman who just offered the services and recover your money. And that's perfectly okay to do in the game. This game rewards the players for actually killing cops. You know, and this is, now you might say that, okay, well, you know, this is just one of those fringe games. No, there's games which are on the fringe, which are even worse than this. But this is consistently one of the most popular games, and it's going to become the most popular again when the 6th version is released. And somebody might say, well, you know, what kind of, you know, Muslim parent would allow their children to play this game? Well, my experience has been that many Muslim parents aren't aware of what their children are playing. And second of all is that however it may be, the children are able to do it even when their parents aren't aware. Now, so that's a bit about violence. Now, the other topic is about addiction. Okay, and this is something which is, again, of great concern. When I, you know, and educators I speak with, they hear about children who are, you know, playing for hours on end. They're, you know, on weekends, you know, they're bragging with each other about who played more. They are coming to school, or they're entering, you know, they're starting their online session at school, having slept at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. This is very worrisome. And so one of the great risks of video games is that of addiction. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but just be aware that video game makers, it's very much in their interest to have children play the video game as much as possible, for the very simple reason that video games are there to make money from children. Okay, this is a point that parents need to understand. You know, I think that some of you are from my generation, some of you are younger, maybe a few of you are older, but in my generation, okay, video games were not so that the video game makers could make tons of money off of children. Maybe at the most, right, you'd buy the game at the beginning, fine. So, but how much you play, it didn't really matter. That's not the video game that we're talking about today. Okay, you know, they say that that's not your father's Oldsmobile, right? Like, so this is not the video game of your father, right? These video games, the more you play, the more the company is going to make money. So they have teams of neuroscientists and psychologists who they hire and they pay good money to figure out how can they get children addicted to these video games. So it's in their best interest. Okay, we're going to talk more about that in 2 weeks from now, inshallah, when we talk about social media, about this idea of addiction. But here's a short clip from Dr. Leonard Sachs. I had, excuse me, in the previous seminar, I had also shared a clip from him, and this is available on YouTube, the whole segment, where you can search it up on YouTube. But this part is very interesting, where he talks about what is it that's particularly like concerning when it comes to children.
I'm a medical medical doctor. I'm also a PhD psychologist. Over the past 35 years, one of my professional interests has been counseling addicts. And I can tell you one of the most robust findings in addiction is the younger you are when you get addicted, the harder it is to quit. If you start smoking a pack a day when you're 25 years of age, you can give it up easy. If you start smoking a pack a day when you are 13 years of age, the odds that you will ever quit are significantly lower than the odds that a heroin addict can walk away from heroin. It's going to be very, very, very difficult for you to quit. And the same is true for video games. Because Meg Meeker did not allow her son to play video games, he developed other interests. And now at age 18, he can start playing video games. And after a year's time, he decides, it's not worth it. If you say, look, I'm going to limit how much time you play video games, and I'm going to limit what video games you play. Yes, your son may not be invited to the Fortnite party. You know what? That's a great thing.
Okay, so the point is that at the younger the age, the more risk there is for that addictive behavior to develop. Okay, and so there needs to be some guidelines in place. Now, one of the things that I see working with children, and I'm sure many of the teachers who are present, they also see, is the behaviors that children sometimes display are very concerning. There's children who, let's say that there's a calculator in front of them while they're, like in school. So you see them, they're always picking up the calculator and they're always like sort of like fiddling it with like this, and they can't stop doing that, and it's like, what is it that's going on here, right? Why is this happening? And you realize that, okay, well, this is because the child it's so ingrained in them. Remember that hadith that I quoted at the beginning about knowledge for a child is like carving and engraving into a stone. It's like whatever comes in their heart is particularly influential at the younger ages. So video games and that habitual thing, whatever it is of like being exposed to those images, whether it be like the violence, whether it be the gore, the point is that there is a lot of effort going into creating an experience which will keep them there and get them to like feel very comfortable and get them to spend their money. Now, the other thing I want to talk about now is the safety aspect of video games. I want to use an example of one of the popular games, which is called Roblox. Roblox is, many Muslim children are also on Roblox. Now, the thing about Roblox is that it's one of those games which it's deceptive, because when you're playing it, it looks like you're playing with Lego characters. And when you see Legos and you see the kind of like very basic animation, you might be thinking, well, what can go wrong when you have a bunch of Lego characters? Now, again, when you go online and you say that, okay, as a parent, is it safe to allow my child to play Roblox or not? You're going to get different opinions. But I'm going to share with you a couple of things based on my own experience, and also based on what people are saying. The reality is that Roblox is not a game, it's a gaming platform. And what that means is that there are always new games that are being developed and added to that platform. And because you have people who are independently developing games, they are hackers. They can create ways to get around whatever rules Roblox is going to put in to supposedly safeguard children. Roblox is a company. They're out to make money. In fact, they're going to be going IPO. They're going to have a huge IPO when they go public in just a bit here, because a lot of parents are making use of Roblox as a way to like deal with the pandemic. So they're a company. Now, to ask a company to set its own rules that, obviously they're going to set them in a way which is to their advantage, which will still keep the children there. The reality is that Roblox is one of those games which is very unsafe. Now, I don't mean that anybody who plays Roblox at any time is, definitely going to like commit haram, or they're going to be attacked or something like that. But the point is that the nature of the game is one where your children will not be in a safe environment. That's just the fact of the matter. Now, why is that? Because, there are ways for these people to create, these kind of hacks where where the rules that are normally there, they won't be there. So for example, the rules around language, they'll be able to get around those, or the rules around like what kind of avatars, characters to show, that won't be there. So now suddenly that they'll be wearing inappropriate clothing or wearing no clothing. Okay, now beyond that, even in the normal game itself, brothers and sisters, when you have a bunch of strangers who are online and they're hidden behind their screens, so they have the safety behind their screens, these are strangers, right? Where in the world would you ever want your child to be mingling with strangers? Those strangers, many of them are child pedophiles. Like they're actually like in the game so that they can find children, they can develop a relationship with them, and then they can exploit them. Am I talking just based on theory here? No, I'm talking based on anecdotal evidence of children, Muslim children, Shia Muslim children from the best of families, where they, in the course of playing normal Roblox, they have gotten into a situation where they were raped by somebody in Roblox itself. Okay, so it's not just a headline that you're seeing here, or just a warning from the police here. It is a reality. I mean, this is something which does happen to the best of families, like really, and it's very sad to see what can affect a child. I mean, somebody might say, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a video, it's just a screen. No, these type of things can be traumatic for a child to have to go through that at that age, and it was the game that enabled that to happen. If for those of you who are more technically inclined, I recommend that you take a look at this article. It just came out in August on Fast Company, where it shows how these things develop. And in particular, it talks about how, this chat platform called Discord, that Discord is one of the places where these links are constantly shared. And Discord as a company, again, doesn't do much to stop that from happening. Any child can go and they can access, and they can get, oh, here's the link to access that hidden side of, supposedly hidden side of Roblox. But even if it's not the hidden side, even if it's normal Roblox, I have seen, because you can see recordings of people playing Roblox. I have seen how, like, there's a game, this was a few years ago, there was one of the games that was developed, it was the most popular game. It was like one where the children go and they act like they're in high school. And then I saw, this was happening, that they were in the high school classroom and they're not allowed to swear, but they were using, misspelling swear words. And basically they were talking about how they wanted to have a very inappropriate type of interaction with each other. And, this was children who are playing, but they're chatting about this. What happens is that, sometimes parents say that, okay, well, it's okay, I'll let my child go on, but I won't allow them to chat with strangers. Fine, but what happens is that you can get requests for people to be your friends, and then once they're your friends, then they can chat with you. And a lot of times, somebody who might seem like they are a friend, they're not really a friend. They're actually somebody who's in disguise. And we have many examples. You can just go online. You can see examples of, like, parents who are furious because of what happened to their children because of this game. Yeah. I mean, the other thing that sometimes happens is that children will have an account that their parents are aware of, and the parents will be, oh, that's an account that's like child protected, but then they'll have another account on the same device because their parents have decided, in their wisdom or lack thereof, of giving the child their own device, which I think is a terrible idea. They're giving their own device, and now they have two accounts. There's one that the parents know about, and there's one that the parents don't know about. And so the one which they'll use, which is the one the parents don't know about, then there's no restrictions, and then these type of things will happen. So it's not just this game. In general, if you think about it, like, I always, when I talk to children about this, I'm like, would you ever go and play with strangers in the park? And children are like, no, that's just a weird idea. Why would you ever want to do that? So, well, why do you do it when it comes to being online? And if you just go and listen to, for example, the typical, language that's used in the fighting games, like, let's say Fortnite, whatever, it's shocking. It's like, it teaches a whole lifestyle. If you look at the YouTubers who broadcast themselves playing video games, these are some of the most popular YouTube videos. They tend to use the most foul language. Not only that, the way they look at different people and objects in the video game, it teaches children to like basically take everything as a joke, to take everything as a sexualized thing, take everything as like, you know, like just in a negative way. And it's no wonder that the children who play these games, like they become negative like that. They become, you know, cruel and hard-hearted. Brothers and sisters, the gaming industry is not your friend. It is not your friend. You know, like, I don't know if parents are aware of this, but there is more money that's made from gaming than there is from other parts of Hollywood, from television, from digital music. And this is from 2018. I think in 2020, especially with the pandemic, it's around $400 billion, if I'm mistaken, the industry. They make tons of money. Like Roblox itself, you know, there are Roblox developers who have, since March or February or March, they've made millions of dollars on their games because parents, you know, think that they're doing their children a favor by allowing them to play these games. Now, in these games, what happens is you can enter it for free, but then you buy Robux, and then you spend that Robux to like make your character enhanced. Sometimes it can be, you know, your character wearing like a certain dress, or sometimes it's random. It's something where you're not sure what you're going to get by paying this money. And there are sometimes where actually it borderlines on gambling. You know, of course, we know that gambling is haram. Now, beyond that, other thing I want to point out is that, you know, here you have a picture of a casino. Now, we would never want our children to go to casinos. It's haram. You know, it would be devastating when they're young, especially to say that, okay, well, as a parent, let's say that it wasn't haram. I mean, it is haram, but even as a parent, you know, let's say somebody's not even Muslim, you know, would a parent be okay with their child just going to a casino and playing around? They'd be like, no, that casinos are not meant for kids, right? It's dangerous. Now, when they take the best techniques that they have from casinos and they apply them to video games, well, what does that mean? Like that, you know, what is it going to be doing to our children? Why are we not okay with the casinos? We are okay with the video games that are being designed with the best techniques that have been learned through casino research, and now they're even refining them further. And there's been studies done on this. You know, certain games, you know, the way that they reward the players is the same way that, you know, casinos reward their players to make them play longer. The way that there's that element of chance, the same thing. And it's no wonder that some of the Maraja, like Ayatollah Sistani, he says it's ihtiyat wajib, to avoid spending money on an online gaming account because of this type of, you know, gambling issue that comes up. And other Maraja have said that if it's gambling, then it's haram. Okay, now, you know, just a reminder, you know, we have these ahadith which tell us, hurry to raise your children on the basis of our speech, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, before the Murji'a get in. Who are the Murji'a? The Murji'a are people at the time of the Imams who used to say that just let your kids be free. You know, it's not about, or just, you know, just be a good person in your heart. It's not about like ibadah. It's not about rules. It's not about like commitment. Just be a good person with your heart. And they were spreading this type of ideology. What did the Imams say? Did the Imams say that, you know, just, you know, kind of let your kids find their own path? Did they say that, you know, don't worry, you know, God will protect your children? No, they say that you as parents do something to make sure that these guys don't get to them before you get to them. You teach your children from our knowledge, from that pure knowledge of Ahlul Bayt, by which will Allah, by which with Allah will cause them to benefit, so that the Murji'a are not able to overpower them with their views. These are just examples of how the Ahlul Bayt, they wanted us to be aware of what schemes others have for the hearts of our children. They wanted us to act preemptively. Now, the last negative aspect I'm going to talk about when it comes to video games is what impact they have on attention and academics. And then I'm going to be wrapping up my comments, inshallah, and then seeing if there's any comments or questions from all of you. So this is another clip. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is it that I'm, you know, bringing these clips from Dr. Leonard Sachs, and I brought him last time as well too. It's because I've looked into, you know, the approach that he takes, you know, the things that he stands for, the values that he has. He's academically not only a medical doctor, so not only is a psychologist, he's a medical doctor as well too. He's practicing. He's a man of faith. right? And of course, not everything he says we can accept, but the general principles that he's talking about are from a person of faith who realizes that children are not creatures of this world. They're here for a hereafter. And that makes a huge difference on the recommendations that he gives. But he also, one of the things about him is that he bases everything he says on solid research. He doesn't say things, and of course their research doesn't involve looking at scripture. It doesn't involve looking at what the Quran and what the word of God says or the word of the people of God. So what they're saying is just based on what they've noticed and observations, but still it's valuable.
So I want to also talk about how it is attached to attention deficit. How are video games feeding attention deficit?
Well, again, I always begin with the data, and we now have very good research showing that the more time a boy spends playing video games in longitudinal cohort studies, the more likely that boy is to develop symptoms of attention deficit disorder. Modern video games program a short attention span. Everything's constantly changing. And parents who have kids who've been diagnosed with ADD say, wow, he's a star in the video game world. He's really struggling at school, but he's a champion at Fortnite. And parents say, so I want to let him do more of that to build his self-esteem. And that's clearly not best practice, because you're undermining the very skills that you should be strengthening. Wow. You're shortening his attention span when you need to be helping him to develop more of an attention span. And again, everything in that chapter is evidence-based, and it's such a stronger chapter than it was when I wrote the first edition, because back when I was writing that in 2005, 2006, modern video games were very new. We didn't have these long-term longitudinal cohort studies. We had more cross-sectional studies. But now we have studies where researchers have followed the same kids for 3, 4, 5 years in a community and find that the kid who's spending more time playing video games is undermining his social skills, is doing less well in school, is less patient, is less honest over time, and controlling for all the other factors. It's not family composition, it's not household income, it's not language spoken at home or race or ethnicity. It's the time he spends playing.
Okay, so this is something again that is seen in the realm of education. When you're working with children and you see this type of attention deficit, according to this researcher, there is a link here. So this is just something, again, for the parents to be aware. And generally speaking, there are children who they are avid video game players and they do really well in school. So it's not something where it's a definite thing, but what is it doing overall to their learning habits and what kind of learning goes on, and, you see that same child, is no longer able to, like, the way that they learn, they have to be, they can't sit through a lecture anymore, for example, and then people come and they say, well, why is it that, like, look at these boring Maulanas who speak from the mimbar, what's wrong with them? Why don't they modernize their techniques? And, may Allah bless them, they're trying hard, but sometimes the issue is not with their technique, it's with the upbringing. Like, what is it that's happening here? How is it that the children, why is it they have such a short attention deficit?
So,
okay, so some of the things to keep in mind now. Am I aware of how video games have changed over time? Like, as a parent, what am I basing my knowledge off of? Is it based on what I know of the video games from the past, or is it I've updated, I understand what's going on? Do I know what my children are playing? Do I apply the same standards of protection for my child online as I do in real life? Those are some things to keep in mind. Now, for the last portion, it's really now, what is it that we can do? Is it okay as parents to set rules? This is a study that's been done. It's been done by many psychologists. It's decades old, of different parenting styles and what is the impact on the children when parents take a different approach. And what they've done is they've divided into 4 categories. One of them is based on how much control the parents have over their children. Are they no control, not strict at all, or do they have high expectations and demands from their children? Those are 2 sides of that. And the other one is based on how much love and care do they show to their children. How responsive are they to their needs? Are they empathetic? Are they aware of what's going on when it comes to the emotional, and we would add, of course, spiritual state of their children? Are they concerned? Or do they show sympathy? Do they show empathy? Right now, it makes 4 quadrants. You have the uninvolved parents who probably wouldn't be here today because they wouldn't care about what's going on with their children. So be like, whatever, we're not really involved. We're just you're on your own, basically. You can raise yourself with your own device, and I'll give you food and I'll give you a place to live. And then you have those parents who are authoritarian, where they don't have care for the children, but it's like a military style type of raising their children at home. Both of these have, just based on worldly standards, have not resulted in children who measure up to any standards of success. Usually they have issues when it comes to their own families, like especially if they were raised in an authoritarian way. They don't know how to have positive relationships with their own spouse or their own children. You have the permissive parents who are like, oh, everything's, I have to be my child's best friend. I have to like show them a lot of love, but also let them kind of make their own calls on things, and they can decide for themselves what's good for them. And want to just avoid confrontation. And then you have those parents who have a high level of love for their children, and they show a lot of care for them. They respect them, but they also have high standards and expectations as well too. And for this quadrant here, they've shown that those children, when they get to be older, they have those type of qualities that, according to their standards, are positive. Now we can take something from this, if we look at Islamic guidelines, we do have that authority and that responsibility to be able to set guidelines for our children, and we have to do that in all matters, not just when it comes to just purely what's halal and haram, or not just when it comes to academic matters, in their holistic development. At the same time, we also have to show them a lot of love and care and give them our time. And if we have the combination, it will be the case that we're doing our responsibility. Now, it might not be the case that our child likes everything we tell them, but at the end of the day, we're doing our responsibility. If you look at a horse, it develops from a foal to being like a full adolescent by age 4. When they compete in the races like Kentucky Derby and all that, they're like 4 years old. In 4 years, it doesn't need its parent anymore. Like it's learning how to be on its own within a year. And then it becomes a senior citizen in its late teens or 20s. But children take a lot longer to develop, to be able to make their own decisions, to be able to make wise decisions. And if we're not there to help them and to put those guidelines in place, then our children will likely end up making wrong decisions. Now, what can we do? There's the easy way out. Now, in the pandemic, it's like, okay, just basically I surrender, the screen takes over, it's I don't have any other way out. My children are going to die if they don't have uncontrolled access to video games. And so therefore I'm going to also, be stuck to my screen. It's okay for my kids to be stuck to their screen as well too. And this has been the approach of many people, that basically now, especially with the pandemic, it's over. Others say that, okay, well, at the beginning we had to do that back in March, April, but now let's try to now we're seeing some of the negative effects. Now let's try to dial it back, try to figure out some other approaches. Or can a safer approach be taken? Okay, and I'm getting down to my last comments here. Brothers and sisters, the video game industry, it continues to grow and become more sophisticated. They learn how to engage the young minds more and more based on the feedback they get, and they know what makes them more money and what doesn't. So they use this knowledge and they always get better and better at their game. Our children's defenses are limited, and the long-term impact is still not understood. Because they haven't measured, for example, what happens to a child's mind when they're on, they're exposed to the type of stuff that's out there right now, because enough time hasn't passed yet, and they don't even look at spiritual matters. So my question for you, especially for those our parents here who are still, they have younger children, or they don't have children yet, and they're thinking now, they're trying to decide what kind of strategy they're going to take. Well, when you're dealing with the unknown, should you take it risk or play it safe? Right? It's a simple question, right? Like we know, like when it comes to things like bicycles, I mean, it comes to things like sports equipment, and when it comes to rollerblades, and when it comes to, let's say, learning a new language, or doing Sultan Lahan of the Quran, we know that these things, what kind of impact they're going to have on children. But there's a lot of unknowns here. It's much harder to get rid of bad habits than not to start them. It's much harder to erase what has been seen and heard than not to see or hear them. And they say like an ounce of prevention prevention is easier than a pound of cure, or something like that, something like that. So what are some guidelines? So first of all, take an approach based on logic and research, not based on what your children want or what others do. This idea that, okay, we're forced to do this, that cannot be the case, because these things were not around, 20, 30 years ago. And even the way they are right now, they're so, like they weren't there. So to say that, no, we have to, no, that's not logical. Okay, whatever it is, there has to be a logical approach. Now, strengthening family bonds, so gaming has no room for being an important part of a child's life. This is very important. We can't expect that our children are going to not be so much into gaming and not be like, that's the only thing in their lives that's fun, if we're not if we're not spending our own time with them to be able to give them those alternatives. Now, what is it that we have to do? My recommendation here is that, first of all, spend time. When you spend time with your children, you will see that automatically, it's almost like it's something which it's quite amazing. It's like, I don't know if it's like a mini miracle or something. Sometimes, you're like, I've been stuck, for example, on a very cold day, where you can't go outside for whatever reason, with my children, at home. It's like, well, what do I do? Let's say, and may God bless all those who struggle with this, and they come up with, they struggle and they strive, and they do their job. May Allah bless them all the mothers especially. But let's say that, for example, I've been in that situation, of course, not as much as my wife, may Allah bless her, but you're sitting there and suddenly, like, it's like, okay, well, let's create an obstacle course right here. Let's run around. Let's like time how fast you can run from here to here. Let's play Marco Polo, for example, when kids are younger. Let's bring out a board game. Let's talk. Let me tell you a story. Let's read this book together. And the list goes on and on and on. And suddenly, you'll see that, wow, there's a lot that we can do with our children, even when we don't have that much. Okay, even when it's just our family. When it comes to reading, right? I mean, there is a lot of trash out there, whether it be Diary of the Wimpy Kid or, whatever that's there. But there is, there is a reading material which is not so bad, and sometimes it's actually good, right? So but it's the idea is that our children should from us, if we want to be able to set guidelines and rules, that we also have to be able to make them feel like they're loved and they're appreciated. Now, my recommendation is to have strict limits for those parents who do allow their children to do gaming. And of course, it's a parent's decision. And sometimes, they're very aware of what games their children are playing and they're following all the guidelines. So, okay, now just make sure that there's limits in place. One recommendation, which seems to make sense, is no more than 40 minutes per night on weeknights, no more than 1 hour a day on weekdays. That's the maximum, not the minimum. There might be the case that, there's some more pressing work that the child has to do, or, today is a day where we're going to go out, we're going to go hiking. Today we're going to go visit, go out of town, whatever like that. So, oh no, okay, today it's not going to be there. So fine. Okay. It's not that it's like a wajib type of thing. No rolling over minutes where if you don't do it one day, now you get more the next day, because that's harmful. No devices in the bedrooms, because it's not that we don't trust our children, it's that we don't trust what, that multi-billion-dollar industry that's aiming at them. And we don't trust what those people are putting up on those Discord servers. We don't trust, those pedophiles who are roaming around. And so there has to be something where we're fully aware of what's going on. No haram content. There are video games where like for example, there's some sports games where they have some parts of it which some of the people are very inappropriately dressed. Now the sports part of it, apparently you don't see anything wrong with it, but that part is kind of, it's very inappropriate. Now, can you find those games where they can play the sports, but they don't have that inappropriate content? That's something to look into. And when it comes to like these uncut scenes, and when it comes to like, some of these like sort of, like these additional things that you can get, like these are things that need to be looked into. And some of the games are just inappropriate. There are websites like Common Sense Review, which the parents, they put their own comments up, and you can go and see, well, what is it that's actually there behind the scenes in the game. No inappropriate ads. Some games are, especially the free ones, there's nothing wrong with the game, but then the ads that are shown are often inappropriate. So and they can be worse than the game itself. And this is speaking from experience of what children have said. And then parents should know everyone the child is talking to on a game. This is my humble request that, how is it that we're okay with our children speaking to strangers? We should know everyone the child is talking to on a game. Final recommendations are that believers need to support each other, my brothers and sisters. We have a verse in the Quran, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate with each other in goodness and righteousness, and do not cooperate in sin and transgression. It's very difficult to raise children in a non-Islamic society and to raise them on the basis of Islamic principles, and to do it consistently with all children. It's even harder when you're doing it alone. So we need to help each other. Like, for example, one thing that's worked for me is that, like, for example, where I am, the fathers who are, all the fathers who have boys in the same grade, we meet every couple of weeks, outdoor in a socially distanced manner with masks, whatever. We go hiking, and we invest the time with our sons, because we know that our sons need to know that there's more to life than just a screen. And alhamdulillah, like, I really appreciate those fathers who take that time. And I'm on weekends, of course, there's a lot of stuff we want to get done, but I make this be a priority. It's very important. I think that every parent committee, whether it be the parent committees of each grade in an Islamic school, or the parent committees of a Sunday school, or even, let's say, in a community, maybe there should be these parent committees that are formed. Like, one of the good things they can do is to, like, foster that type of communication among those like-minded parents who have the same or similar approach towards tarbiyah of their children. And I know that that during the pandemic our options are limited, but sometimes we're not taking advantage of what options are available to us. And sometimes, even just allowing that communication to take place, even if it's in a monitored manner, or let's say, like, there are parents who have done things like, for example, one of the fathers was telling me that they got together for doing some biking with a fellow family, like, or sometimes there's another set of parents who are working to, like, on a project with their sons, for example. There's different things that can be done, but they just take some effort. And alhamdulillah, parents are very talented and they can do a lot, but especially when they work together. Okay, so with that, just to recap some of the topics that we spoke about, are the potential harms of what is the purpose of what is it expected of us as parents, and those are general guidelines we can then apply. And then we talked about some of the harms of the games, and then we talked about some practical suggestions. I'm sorry for going beyond time. I didn't realize that it would take this much time, but we still have some time for questions, feedback, and inshallah, we're going to continue this topic next time, 2 weeks from now. We talk more about screens and social media. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi.
Thank you, Sheikh Salim, for an eye-opening presentation. The detrimental impact of video games and excessive passive screen time on our children is definitely a topic worth discussion. Inshallah, the seminar was of great insight to all community members. Before we continue to the question and answer segment of the seminar, I would like to mention the sponsors of this event. This event is sponsored by Rise Education System, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our goal is to create a global community of learners. We have Rise Academy, a face-to-face school in San Jose, California, and Rise Online in nationwide in North America with an aim to go global, inshallah. We at Rise Education hope to continue presenting seminars on topics that impact our youth. Please follow us on our YouTube channel to stay connected and receive updates. We will be posting a link to a survey in the description for the second seminar video. Please actively participate in the survey so we can plan further seminars based on your needs, inshallah. We will now open for Q&A. You may ask your questions in the Zoom chat or the YouTube question answer section, as both platforms are open. Please note that we will be taking questions related to the seminar topic only. Right, so I'll be taking the questions for on both the Zoom chat as well as the YouTube. So the first question that I see over here on the Zoom chat is, Salam alaikum. As you said, the entertainment can be there, but under a limit. So just wanted to ask, at what age should social media be allowed and under what limits?
Okay, inshallah, thank you for the question, and jazakumullah khair to everyone who is asking questions or giving their suggestions, their ideas, their thoughts. Thank you so much for contributing. In regards to social media, inshallah, we're going to talk about it in detail 2 weeks from now. But overall, when we talk about this thing, it's the very fact that this question is being asked, like, well, what age should we allow it? It means that there's a lot of concern, right? And there's a lot of worry, right? And it's not like about like bicycles. And when should we do bicycles? Well, as soon as so the in general, the approach should be one of like, okay, well, really like it's one of those things where like if you have to, and it's like you determine as a parent that it's something that's necessary, then you do it, but you do it in a proper way. Okay, you do it in a very carefully monitored way, and you do it to the extent necessary, because there's so much like concern about what could happen. And what that means is not allowing all types of social media. Like, for example, let's just say with my high school aged child, there are only limited platforms that I allow him to communicate with limited individuals, and I'm on top of what's happening because his screen is right in front of everyone can see, and we're always in communication about it. I also try not to encroach upon him to the point where he feels like he doesn't have nobody trusts him or anything like that. But the point, there is an understanding there of like, we love him and we care for him, but we're also worried about what could happen. And so there's limited platforms. He communicates through his laptop. He doesn't communicate through his device. So it's not like it's going around everywhere. Now, there's limits as well too. There's certain times when that can happen. There's times where it can't happen. Sometimes I actually encourage it because I know these people. I know that the fathers. I know the family. I know these children, and I actually want that bond to be created. And I'm aware of the topic of conversation is positive. Okay, but so you see how I'm just giving you an example of how it's being done, but with thought. Okay, in particular, when it comes to social media and the use of apps like Instagram and Snapchat, there's a lot of concerns, especially when it comes to girls, and that's something that we're going to be talking about next time, inshallah, more. But one of the key things is really like asking yourself, well, what part of social media is necessary, and why am I doing that for my child, and what is the effect going to be? And how can I do it in a way where, net it's going to be positive, and these type of considerations.
All right, Jazakallah. The next question that we have over here is, how much time should be given for video games during weekends? How good or bad is Nintendo Switch or Minecraft as a game for kids aged 7 to 10? Okay, so again, I'm hesitant to tell parents exactly what time to put here, because at the end of the day, it's not something which is on the basis of haram and halal. There are some video games so it's about knowing the principle. There are some video games where even a minute of it, I would say no way, because it's either haram or it's destructive for your child. And maybe you could say it's haram from that way. And there's some video games where no, okay, it's not. So there's a lot more than just the amount of time. Second of all, it's really the parents need to decide and come up with their policy.
what I recommended on the slide, just based on what some of people who I feel like they have some good insight into this, is on the week, it was a weekend, like one maximum like an hour on the weekends. Okay, but some people's lifestyle may be different, and the point is that what they've shown through research is that more than 45 minutes can be destructive in the long run. It can be addictive, and as parents also, you can tell like what's happening. You can be monitoring and see, is it something which your child is getting addicted to or not, and what are they actually doing during that time? Are they spending it in a way where it's just a matter of getting kind of, it's just a matter of being entertained for a bit and then moving on, and that's not their whole life, or no, that is their whole life. That's the only thing they're living for. So these are some of the things to look into. And then the second part of the question was Nintendo Switch, Minecraft. Minecraft is one of those games where when somebody's playing it alone, it seemingly it has very little potential for harm, and it can be actually, in a way, it can teach the child something, but we have to be careful, right? Because there are modifications that can be installed where suddenly it looks very innocent, it suddenly becomes like a terribly inappropriate game. Also in the multiplayer mode, it could be the case that the issue of chatting comes about and just talking. So for all these games, right, like there's one time, as soon as the game is connected to strangers, then it just opens up a whole world of possibilities. That's where it really is on the parents then to create that environment where they're fully aware of what's going on. They're fully engaged, and they're not leaving it up to their children to deal with this, like with their enemies. Like they're fighting. So like if I don't play Minecraft with my children don't play Minecraft, but let's say if I wanted them to play Minecraft, I would play with them. I would be there with them, and I would be making sure that I know what's going on there. I'm with them in the game, so okay, fine, and unless I'm 110% sure, I wouldn't leave them alone then.
All right, Jazakallah. And the next question that we have over here is, how does one handle their children playing with other children who are involved in gaming/social media?
Yeah, I mean, like it is a reality, and I'm not saying that any child who's involved with gaming or social media is a bad kid, or their parents are bad parents. What I'm saying is that when it's uncontrolled, when when there's ignorance involved, that's where it's really dangerous, so that's first point. Second point is that let's say that, okay, no, there are children where it's uncontrolled, they play as much as they want, whatever like that. Okay, then we need to educate our children and say that, like, look, it doesn't mean that these kids are bad kids or that you're better than them. They might be the best kids in the world, and they could go on to be the companions of the Imam of the time and the best Muslims. But they're making certain choices in life which are different than the choices that we make. So I want you to, be kind and be nice and interact, everything like that. But there's for everything there's limits, right? And you can engineer it as a parent to make sure that your children's closest contacts are those where they have the same type of tarbiyah strategy.
All right, Jazakallah. I have a lot of questions here regarding social media, but inshallah, I do want to remind you that our next session will be on social media. So please do come to that session and direct your questions for that session, inshallah. We will be taking questions strictly relevant to gaming for this session, gaming and screen time. So I have another question over here. Assalamu alaikum. What if the damage happened already and the boy is almost 18 and he is still gaming and spends hours a day and it is too difficult to stop it? How to fix this?
Yes. So when when a child is 18, the older the child gets, the harder it is for parents to have a lot of influence on them. And it's just, they are becoming an adult, and even from an Islamic perspective, it now is less about putting down strict, sort of commands and prohibitions, and more about sort of reasoning with them, or trying to use indirect approaches. In some cases, it may help to take a more brute force approach, if somebody feels that that's going to like sort of jolt them into place. But a lot of times it's going to be just about like, okay, well, you know, trying to get them to see that, okay, this is not healthy for them. So what I mean by brute force approach, like for example, you know, you take your child on a camping trip, you know, and you say that, okay, well, in this time, you know, we're not going to have access to the game. So you break that type of attachment they have. You let them, you know, see the world from a different perspective, right? You take them on a trip, whatever. I know it's hard right now to talk about these type of things, right? But, you know, obviously, like we try to improvise whatever it is, right? Sometimes the brute force approach might be that, like, you know, let's say it's getting to the point where it's destructive, right? So you're like, okay, you know what, I can't support your gaming habit anymore financially. You know, like it's something which, you know, you're going to be on your own, and you even threaten to cut off other finances from them as well too. Like let's say the university tuition, whatever it is. But the point is that these type of things, like it's limited in how much leverage you have over them because they are their own person at this point. It would be more in the level of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi Anil Munkar. And that's at the level of like, you know, reminders, you know, sort of using, like playing with the strings of their heart, seeing if you can talk to them logically, giving them the good example, giving them role model, giving them that support. And again, sometimes, you know, trying those more harsher approaches, making dua as well too. We shouldn't at all, you know, negate the role of dua and tawassul and asking Allah for help. But the main thing is don't let it get to that point, prevention before cure.
Right, Jazakallah. And our next question over here is, I agree, Sheikh, but if one of the partner is not interested, what do you do, especially over 17-year-old child or teenager?
Yeah, I mean, again, like with the 17-year-old child and above, I mean, the seminar is really geared towards children, and that's where we have the most leverage. That's where we can employ these type of techniques. When the, you know, over 17, again, like the type of approaches that we can take are now limited. But in general, when it comes to, let's say, different approach, parents have disagreements on, let's say, screen time, whatever age the child may be. This is where the spouses really need to have a proper discussion, you know, over like, look, this is not about, like, let's say they have a different approach towards the deen. Like for one of them, religion is important in their life. The other ones, it's not, they don't have that much of a commitment to it. Okay, let's not talk about just that for now. Let's talk about the well-being of our child. You know, what is it that, you know, this is not minor things. Now, there's a multi-billion-dollar effort to also suppress some of this thing, right? Because obviously the companies want, you know, the children to be playing these games. So be aware of that as well. But even if besides that, you know, there is evidence that this affects the development of a child. Like they're not developing they're not thriving in terms of what's going to happen to them. So at that level, parents should be able to agree that we want our child to thrive. Well, what does that mean? It means that we have to have some restrictions.
Jazakallah. I have two questions which are very similar, so I'll say them together, inshallah. So what activities can we recommend to our child to do in order to counter video games? Because to be honest, I have met many parents that have been saying my children play a lot of video games, but when you ask them what else they should do, they don't have an answer, especially in this pandemic. And the other question is along the same lines, specifically about teenagers, such as 17-year-old, 18-year-olds, who don't like going out, especially with all the coronavirus, and their only option may be video games.
Okay, so the first one, you know, there's one time where we look at that part of, we just say, okay, well, now our children are playing video games, excessive video games could be like dangerous for them. Now, what do I need to replace it with? Okay, now if the child is like spent like years and hours a day playing video games, and you say, oh, let's sit down and play Trivial Pursuit. Let's sit down and play Monopoly. They laugh at you. They'll be like, what is this, right? This is like the most boring thing in the world. You know, I've had parents where the child is so upset, they go and they hit their heads on the walls because they just can't, they're so like missing their video game so much. And it's very sad. You know, we're talking about like somebody in 5th grade doing that. That's not the issue. I mean, that's part of the issue, but let's look overall that how is it that we're raising our child that the most important thing in their life is video games, that we're so scared of like, you know, taking that away or reducing it? You know, why is it that entertainment is like the main thing? Is like, is it the case that children are supposed to be entertainment monsters? Is that the way that we're supposed to raise human beings? That's not what God put us on this world for. That's the first stage of the verse that we quoted at the beginning. Being diverted and in playing, that's the first stage. We're supposed to grow out of that stage, after a certain point. So we have to look and see, well, why is it that my child, is so hungry for that? What can I do to change my overall approach? Can I spend more time with my child in a positive way? Can I show them that I love it? Can I take them for walks? Can I let's say go and get an ice cream and eat it in the car because it's a pandemic, right? Can I let's say tell a story to them? Can I ask them about their day? Can I engage with them and work on that positive relationship at home? Can we have those trips on the weekend? Like one of the brothers was telling me just a week or two ago, he's like, we try so hard, we take our kids, every time we have a spare time, we have a plan to do something with them. So am I planning, or am I just, another mother was complaining. She's like, her husband, he just wants to sit at home all the time. He doesn't want to ever do anything, you just stuck to the computer. Well, what do we expect then? We can't just say that, okay, our kids shouldn't do that. So we need to work on developing a healthy, holistic family life, right? Where entertainment is part of it, but it has its own place. And then we can say that, okay, well, this is the healthy type of entertainment, and this is the part which is harmful. And there's so many healthy types of entertainment. I've had parents who attend these type of parenting seminars, and then what they do then is they go home, they reconfigure their homes so that all the devices are visible to everyone. And then what they do is they make a certain part of their home for a play area. They get some, sort of toys, and they have these type of equipment the kids can swing on. I actually, in my slides, I forgot to show this. Let me just quickly show. I know that we're a bit out of time here, but let me just, I personally I'm not saying that you should do this, but I just want to give you an example. Okay. Yeah, here it is. So, when the pandemic started, I was thinking, well, kids are going to be home a lot. So what can I do? So I just went on Amazon and I looked for things that might work, to play at home. And I bought this thing called Swing Ball. By the way, I don't have any shares in the company or anything like that. But it's this thing where you have rackets, you have a ball, and you hit it around, and it was fun, right? So I have it right now in the basement, and you can set it up, you play with rackets, an indoor sport, right? So there is ways of improvising, taking walks, even those of you who are living in colder climates, don't let just the cold weather itself be a deterrent, of course, assuming that it's not against any legal or guidelines or whatever like that. But just taking a walk, right? Bundling up and taking a walk. I mean, it can be so rejuvenating for children, and especially if that walk can be something where you attach it to a pleasant experience. You don't scold them, you don't pick on them, you talk to them in a reassuring way. So there's tons of things, and this is where parents need to be communicating and sharing with each other, saying, look, this is working for my child. Maybe it'll work for yours, or let's do this together. One of the parents right now was commenting in the chat window about, for example, a family art project. Well, that's awesome. That works for them. I know for myself, another thing that we did is, I set up classes with my art classes with my mother for her grandchildren, because she's an artist. So, she's teaching them art, and, people can do that type of thing too. We set up Quran classes, with, qaris, and other parents have done more amazing things than that. They improvise. So the point is that there's so many options available. It takes a type of holistic approach. The long answer to the short question.
Right, Jazakallah. I have two questions specifically about animation, about children watching animation, and if that is okay or not. Anime specifically.
Anime, like Japanese anime?
Yes, I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Brothers and sisters, from my understanding of Japanese anime, there's two features that come to mind of what it entails, what parts of it entail. One of them is a lot of violence. Second of all is that there's certain parts of it which very easily slip into pornography. Okay, and in particular, there's a certain type of anime which is known for this. And when we're talking about pornography, we're not just talking about like there's issues relating to like siblings, which are very common there. For example, like relationship between siblings and these type of very, very like, beyond like, description of like how evil and how like, sort of improper and indecent these things are. Now, so what I'm saying is that now, for some reason, like the type of anime that is popular among middle school children tends to be those type of themes. The most popular one that was there a couple of years ago, I was looking into it. Like it involved like some type of super moves that the main actor could do, which involved like very inappropriate sort of things taking place around them. So I would say that like proceed with a lot of caution. You watch whatever it is that you want your kids to watch when it comes to shows. Don't just trust based on the name. You watch it, okay? And you as a parent, don't just look at what's being shown. Look at what messages are being given. Look at what themes are being given. Look at how these characters interact with each other. Look at how they portray the father and the mother, what kind of relationships they're showing. And keep in mind that the child's heart is like a stone which you engrave on when they're young. So they're going to be learning all these things from that show and make a decision based on that.
Jazakallah. And we have another question about how would you deal with children age 7 despite giving time limit? They play more than the time limit. What do you do then? Are there some suggestions that you could give, Sheikh?
I mean, so first of all, it shouldn't be their device where they can use it however they want. Why would you give a child a device which is capable of, doing, taking them and like when you make it their own device, I mean, it's, like it's a very, very dangerous tool, right? So first of all, so it's not theirs where they can decide. It's something which is, okay, you can use the iPad, for these many minutes and then you can't use it anymore. Okay. No, it's over then. At that time, okay, give it back, time up. Right now, if need be, as a parent, you have the right to go and take that away from them. And they might scream at you, they might, not like you, or they might call you names or whatever it is. They might get angry. But remember, if you're showing them, love and respect, and at the end of the day, they will know that if you're doing something to them that they don't like, it's in their own interest, even though it might be hard for them to understand. But they have to learn, right? They have to learn.
Jazakallah. A parent is asking if you could please specify the name of the anime with the superhero character.
I mean, the one I was looking at was, again, this was popular, like it's Naruto or something, Naruto, whatever.
Naruto?
Naruto, yeah, Naruto. Yeah. But I mean, if we talk about specifics, then it's like, okay, well, there's the other one which is maybe less popular, which may be the same thing or even worse. We don't know, so, and that's not like, we shouldn't be in that position where we have to like be, always like, the idea is that we work off of principles, like what is it that's like, we're not trying to like just find the stuff which just is good enough, we should be looking at what's actually like good, what's actually healthy for our children. And so, sometimes it might be like, this idea that my kids are going to be watching. I mean, if we wanted to talk about cartoons, then, I mean, one of the topics that I talk about sometimes is like even something as innocent looking as Disney, right? Like, what is it teaching our children? Like, what about, people and what their ideology should be, and, the way they should dress and the way they should interact with each other, and, and then let alone, things like, anime or some types of anime. So.
Jazakallah. And we have another question, specifically talking about family members and role models of who could be role models in the family who play video games with your children, who promote it. And a parent is asking, how harsh do we have to be? How do we approach when kids tell you, well, they do it, so why can't we?
So, I mean, I hope it's a game which is wholesome, which is, beneficial to them. And then in which case it can be explained that, okay, well, yeah, this is not, they're playing that game. They're, it's not something which is, let's say, dangerous. It's not something which is inappropriate. So, just because a family member plays a game doesn't mean that everyone else in the family has to play a game. Like, let's say my children's uncle, let's say, for example, decides to, I don't know, take up, let's say, a type of volleyball. Okay, well, it doesn't mean my children have to play. I mean, you know, if there's something which makes sense. But if the thing is something which is inappropriate, then of course, I mean, then you know, then first of all, we have responsibility to the family to say, okay, look at like this type of thing. You know, you not only is it affecting you, but you should realize that my children are also, you know, seeing this and they're wondering because they love you, they actually care for you, so they're wondering why is it that you do such a thing. So then let's say they insist on continue, then you say, well, okay, please do it in a way that it's not going to be visible to my children, that, you know, because as a parent, like you know, you should have enough like respect for me that I can, as a parent, I can make my own decision when it comes to my children, how I'm going to raise them. And this is what I think is the right thing to do. And so my humble request to you as your sibling or your family member is that please don't do something that's going to be setting a bad example for my children. If you want to do it, then hide it from them.
Jazakallah, Sheikh Salim. Thank you, participants, for your insightful questions. We are 15 minutes over, so unfortunately, we will not be able to take any more questions. But a lot of the questions that were concerning social media, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook, please do attend the next session, which is specifically about social media. I will be showing the flyer to you momentarily. A final thank you to the RISE Education Systems for creating such a platform for community members to benefit from. Please mark your calendars for the upcoming seminars about parenting in the pandemic. The flyer is right here. So as you can see, the next session is Screens and Social Media, happening on December 5, 2020, inshallah. And the one following the social media and screen session will be on December 19th, regarding remote learning and help tips, inshallah. And if you could kindly follow the YouTube page, as we will be uploading the videos and future sessions there, inshallah, and you'll be able to get more information from there, inshallah. Jazakallah for your time and your engagement. Please recite aloud salawat and fi aman Allah to all of you.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
Sheikh, Assalamu alaikum. I just have to ask you a quick question. I'm on the ISM board